It is 7 o'clock. Good to see you this morning. We already know that time is fast running out for countries, including the UK, US and other allied forces, to evacuate people from Afghanistan. The deadline, of course, next Tuesday. But now there's another peril, a warning of a very high risk of a terrorist attack at Kabul airport. It comes from an affiliate of Islamic State, rivals of the Taliban. We'll be discussing this with the Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey, and Labour's Stephen Kinnick, also ahead on the programme. The final big festivals of the summer are taking place across the country this weekend. I'll be speaking to the lead singer of Bombay Bicycle Club as they prepare for the main stage at All Points East. Also on the show...
I've never said it before. While you were falling in love, I was already there. I was already there.
Very much looking forward to this one. We'll be speaking to music legend Joan Armatrading. She's honoured for her work at this year's Independent Music Awards. It is Thursday, the 26th of August. On alert, a warning of a very high threat of terrorist attack at Kabul airport. The UK and the US tell their citizens to stay away.
We're operating in a hostile environment in a city and country now controlled by the Taliban, with the very real possibility of an ISIS-K attack.
Well, despite that warning, the rescue operation to airlift Afghans and other nationals from Kabul is continuing as the Taliban deadline draws nearer. Migrants across the Med, a special report as we track the thousands trying to reach Europe from Tunisia. No jab, no job. Care home owners say rules forcing staff to have the COVID vaccine could soon cause a staffing crisis. Another medal for Team GB at the Paralympics. Aileen McGlynn and partner Helen Scott winning silver in the women's Class B 1,000-metre time trial.
And we're live here in Northampton as family and friends of Maisie Summers-Newton wait nervously as she goes for gold in Tokyo.
And it's looking fine and dry once again across many parts of the UK and Ireland. A little cloudier for some and warm in the west. I'll have the details for you later.
Morning all. Britain, the United States and Australia have issued a warning to their nationals to stay away from Kabul airport due to fears of an imminent terrorist attack. Officials in Washington have been somewhat more specific, saying two of the main gates at the terminal should be avoided. The attack threat comes from an Islamic State affiliate and piles more pressure on the evacuation effort, which is being carried out, of course, under the watchful eye of the Taliban. Our Foreign Affairs editor, Deborah Haynes, has our first report.
For those desperate to flee Afghanistan, a new danger. The UK has issued a warning to stay away from Kabul airport because of an ongoing and high threat of a terrorist attack. But will anyone listen, given this is the hub of a massive evacuation effort that's only got days left to run? The United States also worried. Islamic State, the key concern.
It's hard to overstate the complexity and the danger of this effort. We're operating in a hostile environment in a city and country now controlled by the Taliban, with the very real possibility of an ISIS-K attack. We're taking every precaution, but this is very high risk.
Islamic State Khorasan, or ISIS-K, emerged in around 2015 as part of an expansion of the group's reach from Iraq and Syria. The Khorasan region historically covers Afghanistan, Pakistan, Central Asia and parts of Iran. ISIS-K fighters are thought to number up to 2,200, though this figure could well be rising given the security vacuum left by departing foreign troops. They're mainly based in Kunar and Nangarhar provinces and are responsible for some of the worst attacks in Afghanistan. One at a maternity hospital in Kabul last year killed 24 people, including mothers and newborns. The group's led by a militant called Shahab al-Muhajir. Previous leaders have been killed or captured by US and Afghan forces. Islamic State also no friend of the Taliban, and how Taliban leaders negotiated with the US in their return to power.
They might try to do something to disrupt the agreements that have been struck. And, launching an attack on Kabul airport now as this evacuation was taking place will be a very good way of causing some trouble for the Taliban and the West, and potentially causing everything to unravel.
Stay there, stay there.
Despite the danger, British and US troops still push on with evacuation flights. Time running out to rescue the thousands who need to leave, before these troops have to get out too. The final moments, perhaps the most perilous. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Well, let's head to, the other end of that journey for many people. Aisha Zahid joining us from RAF Bryce Norton, where the latest plane carrying evacuees touched down at just after midnight. Morning, Aisha. Just bring us up to date with the latest. Do we know much about who was on board, how many, and so on?
Yeah, well, it's likely it was British nationals and Afghans on that flight. It landed here at RAF Bryce Norton in the early hours of this morning, and it was an RAF Voyager carrying around 250 people in total. Now, this airlift operation began nearly 2 weeks ago now, and in that time, the Ministry of Defence has confirmed that around 11,500 people have been airlifted to the UK, and that includes British nationals, embassy staff, evacuees from allied countries, as well as Afghans eligible for the resettlement programme, having previously worked with UK forces. Around 7,000 Afghans have been evacuated by the UK, and that includes individuals and their families as well. Now, currently, around 2,000 people are being taken out of Afghanistan every single day, but the pressure's really ramped up, especially over growing concerns that there is a high threat of a terror attack occurring at Kabul airport. UK officials have asked British nationals to remain safe, stay away from the airport while they wait for their evacuation flights. And Ben Wallace said that Afghans eligible for the resettlement programme should try the border to flee from Afghanistan rather than waiting for these flights. So as that deadline date of the 31st of August looms, the race is on to get as many people back as possible safely, as well as the British troops.
Aisha, many thanks indeed. Well, joining us now on the programme, the Shadow Minister for Asia, Labour's Stephen Kinnick. Mr Kinnick, a very good morning to you. Good to have you on the show. I wonder if we can start with the security situation in and around Kabul airport at the moment. It does feel like we are moving into the final stages of British presence on the ground in Afghanistan. How concerned should we be about the prospect of an Islamic State attack?
Well, any possible threat has to be taken very seriously indeed, and there are clearly credible threats on the ground, and I do hope that people will follow the advice that's been given. We should also just pay a debt of thanks to the brave soldiers and diplomats and civil servants who have done so much heroically trying to move mountains there. Awful scenes that we've seen on the television of people wading through sewage to try to get out, and babies being handed over razor wire by mothers. It is utterly heartbreaking. And although those brave diplomats and civil servants and soldiers are doing so much, they've been badly let down by their political masters, who've had 18 months to plan for this and have completely failed to make the necessary preparations to have an orderly withdrawal. So serious questions do need to be asked once we've got through this phase of getting as many people out as we can. And we understand that up to 2,000 interpreters and others who've helped our armed forces could be left behind. It is utterly unforgivable.
You described the situation as heartbreaking, and certainly with making no political judgments about things, I think everyone would certainly agree with you on that. I do wonder, though, your thoughts about the situation that a man I'm sure you're aware of, Pen Farthing, currently finds himself in. I'm just going to show our viewers a tweet that he has recently released, and I'll read it to you so that you can follow along. Dear Sir, he writes to, in essence, a Taliban spokesman. He includes in the tweet, "My team and my animals are stuck at Airport Circle. We have a flight waiting. Can you please facilitate safe passage into the airport for our convoy?" What should, if anything, the British troops who are on the ground do? He is a British citizen. We know where he is. We assume that British troops have been outside the wire on a few occasions already at the airport. Your thoughts on that?
Well, we had a call with, MPs had a call with the Defence Secretary yesterday, Ben Wallace, and he said we should not be putting pets before people. And I have to say I agree with every word of that statement. I think Mr Farthing had the opportunity as a British citizen to leave last week on a plane. And I think what's always been clear is that this issue with this convoy that he has now with pets, dogs, etc., if it's blocking the runway, so in a way that's not allowing human beings to escape from Afghanistan, then that is problematic. And I think it would be very useful to know how some of these decisions are being made, because I think, first of all, the Defence Secretary said he wouldn't be facilitating this, and now it is being facilitated. So what has changed in government to change that position? Mr Farthing is doing what he's doing because he feels passionately and strongly about it. We understand that, but we cannot be in a situation where we're potentially putting pets before people.
Speaking more generally, though, about the future of Afghanistan, clearly a huge amount of concern about hunger and famine. The withholding of aids, particularly as we edge closer to winter, will exacerbate that situation. At what point do we have to simply say, look, the humanitarian aspect of the situation on the ground in Afghanistan is the priority, rather than holding the Taliban to promises which sounded pretty empty when they made them, frankly?
Well, I think those two things are linked. We need to exert leverage on the Taliban. Some of that leverage, I think, can come through the money that is currently held, the Afghan government reserves that are held in bank accounts around the world, but particularly in the United States, and are currently frozen. In return for the Taliban facilitating safe passage for people who are trying to get out, trying to get to the refugee camps that will now form on the borders with the neighbouring countries, we can potentially use some of that leverage that we have with the money that can be released. So the humanitarian crisis that we're facing has to be dealt with smart diplomacy, smart negotiations, and some real leadership. And the United Kingdom needs to step up and start showing some of that leadership, rather than the indecision and complacency that has been the hallmark of this government right from the beginning of this crisis.
Mr Kinnick, I want to take us in a slightly different direction. It has been some time since we've discussed internal Labour Party politics, but I do need to get your thoughts on the election of the new head of the Unite Union, Sharon Graham. I mean, she was elected on a manifesto that in essence said, we have tried our political project within Labour, it has failed. I mean, how does the Labour Party move forward with the Unite Union?
Well, my understanding is that Keir Starmer will soon be speaking with Sharon Graham and has already congratulated her on winning. The Labour Party and the trade union movement has to work closely together, because we were founded as a party in order to further the interests of working people, and the trade union movement shares that aim. So it's absolutely clear that we have to work together constructively. I am absolutely sure that Sharon Graham and Keir Starmer and Unite and the Labour Party will be able to build a stronger and more constructive relationship. And we certainly really do look forward to seeing that kicking off, really, at our party conference next month. So I see it as a good opportunity to turn the page and move forward. And that can only be good news, both for the Labour Party and for the trade union movement and for working people across the country.
Stephen Kinnick, good to have you on the show this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's bring in our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen. Morning, Tamara. If we can, maybe a little bit later, we'll deal with the internal Labour Party politics, but let's focus on the situation in Afghanistan. Pen Farthing is, as we understand it, trapped very close to the airport. We were discussing this earlier. I mean, this was the situation that Ben Wallace was warning about, wasn't it?
That's right. And as we enter into what is the final stretch of this airlift, we simply don't know how much time is left, but not much time. Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, said on our programme, we mustn't put pets before people. The former Royal Marine is trying to take out dozens of the staff who work at his animal charity, who he says are at risk due to their association with him, and a large number of animals who he says he can't be looked after in Afghanistan. And people have crowdfunded to have not an RAF plane, but a chartered plane to take them out. The concern was that if they couldn't get to the airport because of those Taliban checkpoints, the plane might be blocking a runway and they couldn't get to it anyway. Now, this situation seemed to have come to pass with Mr. Farthing now saying that the plane is there and he can't access it. But questions for the Defence Secretary, because after he said this would happen, he then changed his mind yesterday and said that the plane could come in, with some accusations, including from Mr. Farthing's friends in London, that the Prime Minister and his wife may have intervened personally. That has been denied by Number 10. But certainly, Stephen Kinnick there for Labour saying we need to know more about the decision-making process.
I'm told we do have time to talk about Labour Party politics. Shannon Graham, the Unite Union, of course, big financial backer of the Labour Party. You get the feeling that the new head of the union is willing to leverage that money to get a little bit of political advantage within the party.
That's right. This was a surprise winning of the race by Sharon Graham. This is to succeed Len McCluskey. Unite, of course, the biggest financial donor to Labour, gives them millions of pounds every year. And Mr McCluskey became known as a big supporter of Jeremy Corbyn and someone very willing to express his vocal opinions about the leadership of the Labour Party under a number of different leaders. Now she's won the race, she said a lot about how she wanted to focus on bread and butter issues and not internal Labour Party politics. But certainly there's always going to be a bit of leverage there, since they give them millions of pounds every year, and she's already expressed some opinions about Keir Starmer's leadership. We'll see how much more there is to come on that, or indeed whether Mr Starmer uses his party conference to say anything about the party's ties with Unite, as I know that some in the party are urging him to do.
Tamara, thanks very much indeed. Now, of course, Doha, that is Doha in Qatar. Many flights from Kabul are passing through that part of the world. Our correspondent, Sally Lockwood, joining us from Doha today. There we are, Sally. Just as always, just bring us up to date with the latest. The Americans and the British very clearly want to maintain the tempo of the evacuation process.
Yeah, and boy, hasn't that tempo stepped up in recent days. 19,000 people evacuated by the Americans in the last 24 hours, 2,000 by the British. Now, Doha, as I've said in recent days, is a huge hub for some of those evacuations, because the Qataris are bringing in plane loads of Afghan refugees, but so are the Americans, who have a huge base here, Al Udeid base, with up to 10,000 troops based here at any one time. And they've been using this as one of their main hubs for bringing in these evacuation flights. But with that comes huge problems. That chaos that we've seen at Kabul airport, with thousands of people there desperately struggling to get on a flight. Well, some of that chaos has simply been exported in the number of people that they've been bringing here in recent days. Now, we went to see the Qatari side of Al Udeid Air Base, where they've been bringing in their evacuation flights. We haven't seen the American side yet. We haven't been allowed access, but we've been hearing reports that there is absolute chaos there. Hangars full of evacuated Afghan people who are sleeping on the floor. There's one bathroom between thousands of them. There are huge queues for 6 to 8 hours of evacuated passengers waiting just to get into those hangars, and the processing is taking a long, long time. And one of those issues is because they're also having to check people for security clearance reasons as well. And I've heard from Qatari officials here that that is one of the big hold-ups in terms of processing all of these people. Now, Qatar is doing what it can to try and help. They currently have more than 6,000 people here in transit, as well as refugees that they're taking in themselves. Many female students and journalists have been brought here by the Qataris, and they'll be rehomed here. They do have, thankfully, a lot of accommodation that's been built for the World Cup, and that has been opened early to help house these refugees. I should say one last thing that I'm hearing on the ground from Kabul this morning, that such is the chaos unfolding there still, with people still trying to get to the airport, not able to get to the airport. But with that has come other problems. I've heard from someone this morning in Kabul who said that there are aid workers on the ground at the airport now trying to round up unaccompanied minors, children who've been left behind or got lost in all the chaos, trying to work out who they are and where they need to be. So many, many problems unfolding on many different levels here.
Sally, thanks very much indeed. We'll continue to monitor the situation in and around the airport, as, of course, you'd expect. But still to come on the programme this morning, at 25 to 8, I'll be speaking to one of the British Army interpreters waiting and hoping to be flown out of Afghanistan. And we'll be asking the Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey, how that evacuation effort is progressing. He joins us at 8:10. And at 8:30, wish you weren't here. We'll ask the head of tourism for Cornwall why he'd rather holidaymakers stayed away. Well, as part of our special series on migrants, Sky News has been investigating the huge numbers of people attempting to cross from North Africa to Europe. Well, the number who've died trying to cross the Mediterranean has nearly doubled this year, according to the International Organisation for Migration. Now, let's take a closer look, shall we? At least 1,146 people died attempting to reach Europe by sea in the first 6 months of 2021. 513 migrants are known to have died in the same period last year. The central Mediterranean route from Libya and Tunisia to Italy was the deadliest, claiming 741 lives. The Italian island of Lampedusa has seen a huge influx in migrants. Back in May, more than 2,000 of them landed in just 24 hours, pushing the tiny island to its limit, with one official describing the situation there as literally explosive. 250 people are known to have died trying to cross the Atlantic Ocean between West Africa and the Canary Islands. The Western Mediterranean route between North Africa, mainly Morocco, and Algeria to Spain saw at least 149 lose their lives. And a minimum of 6 people died on the Eastern Mediterranean route from, as you can see, Turkey and Syria to Greece. But the International Organisation for Migration warned that the number of dead may be severely underestimated, given multiple social media posts of families looking for loved ones and reports of possible invisible shipwrecks. Sky's Europe correspondent Adam Parsons has this report.
Dawn breaks on the fishing waters of Lampedusa, and with it, a distant outline. It's a small boat, packed with people. The Italian border police have seen the boat and are on their way. On board, there are 12 migrants, young men who wave and offer victory salutes. They've come from Tunisia. The police follow their boat and they send over a couple of officers in a rigid inflatable to guide the migrants towards the port.
And this is why Lampedusa is so important in the story of migration. Those people have travelled in that boat from Tunisia about 80 miles away. And when they land on this island, they'll be in the European Union.
The migrants arrive in harbour. They're kept on board for a while, details are taken, but eventually they step off. They're given medical tests and then taken away in vans. And this is where they go, an overcrowded detention centre that looks a lot like a prison. Sangare had arrived the previous night. She told us she'd escaped abuse in Ivory Coast and had come here on a packed boat from Tunisia.
Depuis dimanche, on n'a pas mangé, on n'a pas bu de l'eau. On est resté 2 jours sur l'eau. Il y avait une femme enceinte parmi nous. Vraiment, c'était difficile. Le moteur est gâté sur l'eau. Donc, on était obligé d'appeler. Ceux qui font les pêches, ce sont ceux qui appellent les marins qui allaient nous sauver.
The dark is often used as cover. Smugglers can transfer migrants from large ships onto much smaller boats, making them harder to spot. On the night we went out, police and Coast Guard were looking for 7 different vessels. They do pursue smugglers, but mostly their job is about search and rescue. And it is relentless. The morning brings more evidence of migrant arrivals. The waters around Lampedusa are dotted with these abandoned vessels, littered with food and rubbish. The skipper of our boat removes fuel from them as a safety measure. This, the debris left by desperate people making dangerous journeys. And those voyages start here, on the Tunisian coast, itself a seascape of discarded wrecks. This whole area is a centre for the lucrative business of people smuggling. Migrants come here to offer cash they often can't afford in return for the chance of getting to Europe. The money goes to people like Ali. He's 26, a people smuggler wanted for trafficking migrants across the water from Tunisia to Lampedusa. He is unapologetic and apparently unafraid, a dangerous combination.
عندي ثنايا عندي ما ينجموش هما يمشوا فيهم فهمتني هما خاطر عسكيات فهمتني الاربورات نتاعهم ما ينجموش يمشوا في الكسير نحن في الهيكنة يجروا في الكسير برا نحن بتاع كسير ديجا هما زادوا طوروا رواحهم وعملوا طيارات أم في الآخر ما عندهم وين يوصل أكثر حاجة خطر هربت منها هي مرة طيحوني بعيد على اليابسة 18 ميل 21 واحد طيشت روحي للبحر وضربت شعلت عملتهم الكل بس سيبوني.
It's a whole industry, and at the heart of it are the middlemen. This man claims he is careful, but that others are simply greedy and callous.
كما قلت لك راهو تحب تولي لاباس عليك في ليله ونهار غادي راهو في ليله ونهار تولي تدز في الفلوس بالبالة عدي وش يمك وحد كاين حرق وميت وانتو اخر تشقف تطلع لوراك وتوصل.
And people do die in vast numbers. Bodies wash up along the Tunisian coastline, nameless and often forgotten. This dusty strip of land is now a cemetery for migrants who didn't survive the journey.
ساعات تشوف نساء واطفال مثلا كيما مره مراه وولدها معناتها حبينا نكرموهم دفناهم راس الراس قلنا ممكن تكون امه هي الام حاضنه في الحياه وشوف شاءت الاقدار انها تموت هي ولدها وتحضنه حتى في الجبانه. كي تشوف مراه رابطه ولدها في بطنها مثلا شدتها بالفولاره شيء مؤسف والاخرى رابطته على لوحه.
More than 1,000 people have already died this year trying to navigate this particular sea crossing, but still they come. Back in Lampedusa, there are more rusting reminders. This decrepit old trawler arrived recently with nearly 500 crammed aboard. For those wanting a new life, this island has a magnetic attraction, and the flow of people isn't going to stop. Adam Paterson, Sky News, Lampedusa.
Also this morning, thousands of firefighters have been brought in to tackle a large wildfire threatening one of California's most popular tourist resorts. The blaze is heading towards Lake Tahoe and has already destroyed hundreds of homes in San Bernardino County. Music lovers at some of Britain's biggest festivals will be offered coronavirus vaccines this weekend. Organisers of the Leeds and Reading Festival say that ticket holders will be able to get a jab as long as they aren't too drunk. Passengers on board a Mexican military helicopter and people on the ground had an incredible escape after it crash-landed. A warning, you may well find these pictures somewhat alarming. The helicopter was trying to reach areas affected by the recent Hurricane Grace when reports say it suffered mechanical failure, as you can see. Despite a minibus and a car being, as you can just about see, directly underneath them, the helicopter landed just clipping the edge of the bus. 3 people on board, including a senior local politician, were said to have been taken to hospital suffering minor injuries. Very, very lucky escape. Well done to the pilot. Time to see how the weather is looking as we nudge towards the weekend. Naz is standing by with the details. How's it looking, Naz?
Well, believe it or not, for a bank holiday weekend, it's looking mostly fine for many areas. It's all thanks to high pressure that is just not budging. It's staying around for the rest of this week and well into next week too.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. So high pressure sticking around. In fact, it's not really budging at all over the next few days and into the new week as well. It's going to produce mostly fine and settled conditions. That doesn't mean we're going to see wall-to-wall sunshine, though. There will be some cloud here and there at times. In fact, it's fairly cloudy out there this morning, misty, murky out towards parts of the west, particularly for Northern Ireland. But most of the cloud and the mist and the fog should lift and clear and break up, and we'll see some good spells of sunshine this afternoon. The west will be best in terms of the sunshine and the highest temperatures, especially across Ireland, Northern Ireland and western Scotland. It will be somewhat cloudy around eastern parts of England, though breezy around the east coast with 1 or 2 showers too.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Naz, thanks very much. Still to come, well, in the next few minutes, we'll hopefully be hearing from one of the British Army interpreters, hoping to be flown out of Afghanistan. That's next.
I'm Adam Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. Cobbles have been pulled up out and are being used as missiles to hurl at these police. Made by people who dare to challenge. Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier. Why? Meeting you. Fishing does have the potential to stymie an enormous economic deal. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening.
I use not only design but biology to create new materials which actually are fully sustainable and biodegradable. Because of COVID, there was a mass increase of single-use plastics being discarded. So for me, it seemed like a great opportunity to have a material which didn't have a longevity of plastic but could degrade back into the earth.
Welcome back. Day 2 of the Paralympics, and guess what? More medals for Great Britain. Let's speak now, joining us from Tokyo, in fact, NBC sports reporter Lewis Johnson. Lewis, great to see you. Your highlights of the day so far, what else do we have to look forward to?
Lots of things, Neil. Welcome. Great to see you. I was here for the Olympics, and great to be back in Tokyo covering these Paralympics. So it's day 2 of these games, and earlier today, I was at men's wheelchair basketball. Team USA, the defending gold medalist, beat Germany 58-55. The United States was down by 6 at halftime, but boy, there was some hot shooting in the second half from American Brian Bell. He led the team with 20 points off the bench to help them in that win. Now, the German women's wheelchair basketball team was able to win against Australia. They did so, beating them 77-58. And Team GB took on Japan. That was just a short time ago. It was the host nation winning 54-48 over the Brits. Well, tonight we'll see more action from the Yoyogi National Stadium for wheelchair rugby, a highly anticipated matchup between Great Britain and New Zealand. And tomorrow I'll be back at my home Olympic Stadium for the start of track and field. 14 medal events to be contested. We'll also be watching the 36-year-old American Lex Gillette, who returns for his 5th Paralympics. He's competing as a T11 athlete, which means he's legally blind. And Gillette has won 4 consecutive silver medals in the long jump, so Lex is searching for his very first Paralympic gold. On the track, we'll also see the man who's been compared to the great Usain Bolt himself, Brazil's Paterson Ferrari dos Santos, currently the world record holder in the 100 meters. Dos Santos is hoping to defend his Olympic gold. And finally, we'll see the 17-time Paralympic medalist Tatiana McFadden. She's something else, of the United States, and she'll be competing for the first time in the T54 5,000 meters. So, Neil, lots of Paralympic inspiration to come from Tokyo. We're looking forward to it, and we hope that you all enjoy it there.
Lewis, do you know what? I'm getting the impression you might just be enjoying yourself just a little bit out there in Tokyo. Continue to do so, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care. Now, new rules mean that from the autumn, anyone working in a care home will have to be fully vaccinated against coronavirus. The bosses of some homes say that could lead to staff shortages when the restrictions are introduced in November. Sky's Fraser Maude has the detail.
Across England, care home owners are worried they could be facing a winter staffing shortage caused by the impending requirement for all their workers to be vaccinated against coronavirus. The deadline is November the 11th, and the government's own predictions are that up to 40,000 of the more than 500,000 care workers in the country won't be fully vaccinated by then. And with the annual flu season on the horizon, the industry fears not only for itself, but for the NHS.
There are people who are adamant they're not going to be vaccinated, and across the care industry, the knock-on effect of making it mandatory could be horrific. I think horrific is the word to use. Right at the start of flu season, winter illnesses, hospitals will already be under pressure, and they'll have nowhere to discharge their patients to. So it's going to cause bed blocking at the hospital to a degree that we haven't seen before.
Another chair of trustees says the move is grossly unfair and even borders on blackmail.
In Wales, Scotland and Ireland, they don't have to be vaccinated. There is no compulsion. And that seems even more unfair. Why, if they work for the NHS, they don't have to be vaccinated? No one else in England has to lose their job because they don't want a vaccine.
PJ Care employs 600 staff at 3 sites, providing specialist neurological care for over 180 residents, like Darren. He thinks the government's approach is the right one.
I think it should be compulsory. I think it's morally they should want to take it anyway, because they're working with vulnerable people, and they could be affected.
But not all the staff agree. Most are fully vaccinated, but even so, they still think that making that mandatory is a heavy-handed approach.
Long term, I think it's ideal that the staff do have both vaccinations, but I also think you've got some, that it should be down to their personal choice. I think also there needs to be a lot more research and a lot more data available than what there is at the moment.
For me personally, it's more religious reasons, personal reasons. I think people should have that choice at the moment. I think there's not enough information available.
The government says it has a responsibility to do everything it can to reduce the risk for the most vulnerable and has introduced the regulation following extensive public consultation. The fear remains, though, that a sudden drop in care home staffing at a difficult time of year could increase pressure on the NHS by simply shifting the risk rather than reducing it. Fraser Maude, Sky News, Milton Keynes.
At least 20 people are reported to have been killed following flooding in Venezuela. Officials say heavy rain caused mudslides, which destroyed more than 1,000 homes. One godfather of a Japanese Yakuza crime gang has been sentenced to death for conspiracy to murder. It's the first case of capital punishment being handed out to a mob boss in the country. Reports say that the 74-year-old told the trial judge, "You will regret this for the rest of your life." Dentists are warning that people could end up waiting nearly 2 years for treatment. Research by the Faculty of Dental Surgeons suggests the backlog caused by the lockdown could take more than a year to clear. Coming up after the break, we'll be hearing about the dangerous journey taken by thousands of migrants as they try to cross the Mediterranean from Tunisia.
Incredible, it was all teamwork. Obviously, I swam as hard as I could, but yeah, we knocked off
off a lot of time. Brian Thompson and Scott Dawson planned the tides absolutely meticulously. I can't pretend there wasn't a lot of tidal assistance, but yeah, just an incredible swim, and so pleased that we've managed to get it done successfully. Yeah, so because we were going for a world record attempt, I'm not allowed to touch the kayak, so yeah, it wasn't allowed to do that. We were passing food and water attached by a bit of string from the kayak. So that was every 45 minutes. I was topping up on fuel, keeping hydrated, and obviously just so we can keep going. But yeah, we didn't stop at all. 15 hours and 9 minutes, which was more than we could have ever wished for. We aimed for 17 hours was mentioned, and I thought, to be honest, that was optimistic. But to get back in 15 hours, 2 o'clock in the morning, loads of people down there still at that time. They'd all come out to wish us, say thanks, and just the support was incredible. Well, I think it was about 18 degrees. I was in a wetsuit. It's not too bad. It's not massively cold. Obviously, a lot of skin swimmers will say that's incredibly warm. But yeah, we had spring tides. It was very choppy at times. Some of the tide races. There was a tide race off St Cat's, which was you're swimming in flat water, and all of a sudden you've got standing waves, a good 2-3 feet high. I almost took my goggles off. So we had some hairy experiences, but I was pre-warned, pre-armed, and the team was just incredible. We managed to get around, obviously, and it was just an overwhelming success. So I'm very, very passionate about trying to protect our oceans. Plastic pollution is a huge problem that we face, around the world, and it's something that we can all make a difference about. It's not, there's a lot of things that go on in this world that we can't really do a lot about, but plastic pollution, we can all make a big difference. We can stop trying to use single-use plastic, avoid it where possible, and get out there, do beach cleans, raise awareness about it. So yeah, very passionate about that. There's three different charities we're raising money for: Clean Jurassic Coast, Oceans to Earth, and my mate Frosty down in Cornwall, Turn the Tide. They're absolute legends, these guys, and they're out all the time, actively on the beaches, cleaning up, education as well. Frosty needs a boat to get to some of the little coves and things, to get in there and clean them out that you just can't get to without access from the water. So he's going to get a boat. The other guys are going to put it towards their continued efforts, and it's just going to make such a difference.
Did you know that if we make small changes to our lives, we can reduce air pollution by loads? But how much? Exactly, loads.
Most places will see bright or sunny spells this afternoon once any early murky conditions clear and low cloud breaks up. It'll be a mainly dry day too, but a few light showers are possible in the extreme east, where it'll be cloudy and breezy at times. So taking a look at the air pollution levels on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very high, most places will continue with low levels of 1 to 3, with predominantly maritime air persisting across the UK. However, isolated moderate levels of air pollution are possible over central parts of Scotland.
The Air Quality Report, sponsored by Philips Air Purifiers.
As part of our special series on migrants, Sky News has been investigating the huge numbers of people attempting to cross from North Africa to Europe. This morning we've seen pictures revealing how thousands of people are regularly attempting the journey from Tunisia to the Italian island of Lampedusa. Joining us now in the programme, Regional Programme Advisor for the Danish Refugee Council, Yad Buselmi. Yad, thanks very much for joining us this morning. And as I was just saying, we know from my colleague Adam Parsons reporting that thousands of people continue to make the attempt to cross to Europe, despite the fact that Tunisian graveyards are increasingly being filled by people who failed to make it across. Why are they attempting to make this journey in your mind?
Thank you. I think it's despair, to name one reason. These young people are trying to cross to Europe because they didn't find the right opportunities in their home countries, in Tunisia, and they try to have a better life, a decent life, and that's why they're trying to reach Europe thinking that they will have this better life.
in terms of those who are attempting to cross from Tunisia, can we generalise as to their origin, as to their nationality? I mean, are the majority Tunisian, for example? That would seem perhaps unlikely.
Yeah, according to the last data and stats from UNHCR and from our Mixed Migration Center, which has an institutional link to the Danish Refugee Council and is an independent source of data regarding mixed migration. The majority of those people are Tunisian. The majority of people reaching the Italian shores are Tunisians. And there are also other nationalities because departure from Tunisian shores, from Zarzis, from Sfax, from Mahdia, from others, include also other nationalities, be it like migrants who are being in Tunis and in Tunisia in general, or asylum seekers and refugees who didn't find the right protection in Tunisia as well.
Is there anything that officials, that the government in Tunisia can do to, at the very least, reduce the flow of people attempting the crossing and therefore the deaths? I mean, we know how difficult it is, in this country, the crossing that is being made from Calais to the south coast of England. It seems impossible to police that. So what hope for the Tunisian authorities?
I mean, I can just mention what happened a couple of days ago. I mean, an arrest of one of the smugglers who was behind several attempts to cross illegally or regularly to Europe. Tunisian authorities are cooperating with the partners like Italy, the European Union, and else to try to address the root causes of this phenomena, of this problem that is facing both shores of the Mediterranean. But we cannot rely only on a purely security approach to this problem. Definitely, they are doing border patrols, control of the maritime borders. There are a lot of efforts in interception before these attempts happen. There are a lot of rescue at sea by the Tunisian Navy, by many other actors, but it's not enough. We have to look at the very root causes of this phenomenon, which is the despair of these people. They are not only young people, they are adults, they are women, head of families, they are minors. So it's not only because of economic reasons, it is mainly because of that, but there are other different reasons, and that needs a holistic approach, a comprehensive approach, where authorities of the hosting country, where international organizations have a good, solid cooperation to help these people believe that they can have a decent life in their home countries.
Yad, I wonder your thoughts on the potential impact the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan may well have. Of course, clearly, much of the international focus has been on Kabul International Airport. That is the way that Britain and others are getting their nationals out. But you go to the borders and we are seeing huge queues, thousands of people desperately trying to leave the country.
Yeah, definitely I am representing here the Danish Refugee Council in Tunisia, but I would direct the dear viewers here and yourself, Niall, to the statements of our Secretary General, Ms. Charlotte Slente, who was very worried about what is happening in Afghanistan and who reassured everybody that the Danish Refugee Council is staying in Afghanistan. We've been there for 20 years, we're going to stay there. And we're going to do everything possible in close cooperation with all different humanitarian actors to help those vulnerable people in Afghanistan. I mean, it's clear that migration now is the only lifeline for these vulnerable people. And that includes, I mean, to protect them, that includes safe passage for these people, a lot of cooperation between, states and the region, between humanitarian organizations to be able to mobilize the right humanitarian aid to these people. But again, we have a very strong position regarding that, regarding this dire humanitarian situation in Afghanistan. You add to that the pandemic, the drought, the ongoing conflict since 40 years. It's too much for these people.
Yad Baselmi, really appreciate you taking the time. Yad Baselmi from the Danish Refugee Council there. Time for us to check in and see how the weather is looking now. Naz is standing by.